Let's open with a word of prayer. Lord, we want to thank you for your continued watch care over your people. We thank you for the wonderful day that we have had together. As we turn our hearts and mind to a study of your word, your story, the prophetic events unfolding all around us, we ask that our hearts and our minds might be bent towards this endeavor. And that not only we would use our human effort, but we also invite the Holy Spirit to aid and help us, to bring to remembrance things that we may have forgotten. In Jesus' name, amen. So yesterday, we spoke about, I'm just going to call it the Sunday law message, but it's revisiting old studies. And those old studies were all built upon an understanding or an explanation of Daniel and Revelation. And we focused our attention on various chapters. In the book of Daniel, we looked at chapter 2. And in Revelation, we looked at chapters 12, 13, and 17. And why were we doing that? How are we going to do the microphone? Who's doing that? Okay. Why did we do that exercise?
I think because we wanted to point to the things that we need to resolve about the Sunday law message.
So we have acknowledged, we have recognized and acknowledged that despite the truthfulness of past studies, many of which go back almost a decade, those studies were limited. And there were various reasons for that limitation. And so, as we see those studies actually being fulfilled today, or we believe they're being fulfilled, then as we revisit those studies, we have to see if they're still fit for purpose. And as we've begun to do that, two things become clear. So as we review past studies, two things become clear? Anybody want to venture what those two things are? We've spoken about them on screen and off screen. We've already mentioned one just a minute ago. So when those studies were done originally, they were talking about a future event, and we never had clarity on what that future event actually looked like. And that's got nothing to do with the issue of Sunday v. equality. It's much more foundational than that. Even if the message had remained about the Sunday law, we would have still been confronted with the same issue. So no one's ventured to say anything. So I'm going to call it limited visibility. Is that okay? Anybody think of a better term or phrase? A decade ago, we had limited visibility of what reality would look like. Even if the test remained the same. So when I say a decade ago, I'm thinking 2014, 15, 16, and 17. So I'll go from 14 to 16. I'm not going to go back to 12, 17. So this is pre-midnight cry message. Second thing, Mina?
Less complexability.
Okay. We'll put it's much more complicated. What we thought was simple actually becomes more complicated. We had a very immature or childlike understanding of end time events. And now as we review the same verses, we see that we need to refine what we were teaching back then. So that's a part summary of what we looked at yesterday. And I guess a reasonable summary of a number of studies that are going on currently. Not just from me, but from a number of teachers. Particularly the 5 teachers who are teaching the Sunday law, the message about the Sunday law. They're doing this very thing, realizing that because we had limited visibility, we need to reevaluate those past studies, and that the story is much more complicated than we originally thought. Any questions? So that's part of what we were trying to do yesterday, if it wasn't clear to you. So we didn't discuss it in that very simplistic fashion. It was a bit more mechanistic or following some kind of methodology. So what we spoke about was that in the book of Revelation, we discover what appears to be 7 kingdoms. But in Daniel, you're limited to 4. And it wasn't an in-depth study. I'm one of, I'll say several people, hopefully most of us, who believe that those older studies are fundamentally correct. So based upon that, an expression that we use in English is, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. So there are certain foundational premises that I'm going to use to approach this conversation, this study, this analysis. And the primary one is what? We discussed this yesterday. I'm going to call it the foundational. I'm going to call it an assumption. And I put that in sort of quotation marks to show that it's not really an assumption. It's a bit more than that. And what is that? If you want to do this study, what is the assumption that you have to make? Besides Tamina, Blessing?
That Daniel and John are talking about the same thing.
Good. So we'll use their names. Daniel and John, you said saying the same thing? So, yeah. Talking about the same thing. If that's not true, what this movement stands upon just collapses. It's all predicated upon this foundational, I've called it assumption. Could have called it a belief, but that's the same thing. And that's that Daniel and John are talking about the same thing. So I'll express it another way. Maybe someone else wants to say it a different way. Telling the same story. So if we acknowledge that, then because it's not an identical story, because that would be redundant, what do we say to refine that? It's the same story. Repeat and enlarge. Anyone else?
Different perspectives.
It's from, I want you to get that point. It's from a different perspective. It's the same story from a different perspective. And you'll probably remember, or years ago now, I showed this sort of 3D graphic that said if you look at that object from different perspectives, they look very different. And I think someone used that logo for something. I can't remember who did it or what they used it for. Does everybody remember what I'm talking about? Yeah. So telling the same story, but from different perspectives. And they'll rather say it that way than just say repeat and enlarge. Daniel will say 2, 7, and 8. That's much more repeat and enlarge. But even that, as Elder Terry takes a lot of pain to show us, is the same story. She'll say not from different perspectives, but what? She'll say they're different themes. Say like a political theme or a religious theme, for instance. So I would say that's much more repeat and enlarge. Of course, Daniel to John is repeat and enlarge, but I want us to see it from a different perspective. Okay, so if we've agreed with that, that's another point that I wanted to make sure that we're all in agreement with as we discussed this subject yesterday. If you don't agree with those concepts or those ideas, everything that we're talking about doesn't make any sense. So if that's the case, then even though in Revelation 12, John says the red dragon is whom? It's not a trick question, it's the verses. I would expect everybody to shout out. Satan. He says it's Satan. And Alan White's going to say, so let's do that then. Maybe we're going to do that. Oh, there it is. So this was Revelation 12, the red dragon. John says it's Satan. And Alan White says what? Pagan Rome. And us, the movement, what do we say? Is it Satan? So I'm going to say no. And is it pagan Rome? No. So what do we say it is? It's USA. That's definitely not the USA. Trumpism didn't, in 2,000 years ago, do much damage. Papacy wasn't around 2,000 years ago. State power, the kings. It's got 7 heads. What's the first head? It's Babylon. Now, you know that in that story, Babylon isn't there. But when we talk about the dread dragon, we understand the chapter is talking about a specific history. But we're forced to say that the red dragon is, someone said, Papal Rome. Can't be Papal Rome because Papal Rome didn't try to kill Jesus. They're not even there for another 500 years, plus or minus. So we could go with King of the North. Yesterday, we labeled them as the world. Someone said Satan and someone said USA, but I put that in quotation marks because it's a bit more than that. So we know that that dragon is Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, Papal Rome, something to do with the land beast, and then the dragon. So, to be fair on blessing, you can say yes to Satan, and therefore you can say yes to it being pagan Rome. But we're only saying that because in reality, we're talking about what? If you're only focusing on a certain narrow portion of history, and that dragon was alive long before that history, and the dragon's alive way after that history. When does chapter 12 end? We'll go with 1798. We'll go with 4 BC to AD 1798. Maybe someone would want to push it a little bit further. But we would see that chapter 12 brings you into chapter 13. If we're okay with that. Everybody okay with that? And chapter 13 begins when? That's a trick question. Gabriella? You said something. Think aloud for...
I don't know.
Okay. You can say that. You need to say, I don't know, Tim. Okay. Raquel? Just give us a date. It's the date.
508 or 538?
Excellent. So we'll go to the 6th century. This beast rises up out of the sea. But that's being done from the reference point of what date? 1798. Blessing already gave us that answer. So it looks back and it looks forward. So we can see that for us, that red dragon means, we can say symbolically it's Satan. And we know it's a lot bigger than pagan Rome. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say it's everything. I was going to put everything bad, but I'll just leave it as everything. Could say the statue of Daniel 2. Everybody sort of reasonably comfortable with that? The only point I'm trying to make is that it's too easy to say pagan Rome or Satan. And when you do that, you inadvertently put yourself into a ditch that it's hard to escape from. So we wouldn't use the word ditch. We'd probably use the word bias now. And it's very hard to relook at things once they've already been set in place or verbalized. Because the way our brains work, they always work from a reference point. They never work as a blank sheet of paper. And very few people in the movement, outside the movement, but only worried about in the movement, have been able to successfully navigate their way through that treacherous path of biases. I was saying biasm, but I don't think that's a word. Are we okay with that thought? Because yesterday we said that red dragon is a lot bigger than pagan Rome. Everybody okay with that? So we then said, as a close approximation, the 4 kingdoms of Daniel are the same as the 7 kingdoms of Revelation. So you would say the statue is the same as the dragon. Are we okay with that now? You can see the connection. Okay, so we did all of that. Then we drew that graphic that has the time of the end in 2 different places. And we speak about the 5th to the 6th kingdom and then the 6th to the 7th. Now, that's, again, a very simplistic story. So we didn't discuss this bit yesterday, but maybe we'll discuss it now. So we teach, Adventism teaches that maybe some of Adventism teaches it, maybe they don't all. The 5th to the 6th kingdom. The 5th is whom? Papacy, you said? Papacy. I'll let you say papacy, but it's a stretchy term. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a stretchy term of what that is. Sorry? No? So we'll go with papacy. It's a close approximation for our purposes. Number 6 is just a simple answer. USA. So We might put an extra date after 1798 because we might say there's a wound and there's a death. We might have an extra date besides 1798 because we'd say there's a wound and a death. But we'll just, for our purposes, say that there's a death here. So if the papacy dies, then we have a problem. Because if the papacy dies in 1798, and then we do the graphic as it's done here, put 1989 underneath it, and you go from number 6 to number 7, you're quickly going to begin to have problems. I'm going to just say, what's the problem? But that's probably too big a term and you're not going to know. But I can't give you a clue. Because it would be too easy then. What's the problem with that? The papacy died. 1798. Then what do we do? Anybody?
No, I just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
ask him to repeat the question.
Oh, did I repeat it enough or not yet?
No.
So the papacy dies in 1798. And then we have a graphic that says in 1989, which is a line here, that's where 1989 is. It's the same line. And what we do is we cut it. And then we bring it underneath. Everybody knows that. Everybody should be comfortable with that. If you're in the movement. Because if you're not comfortable with that. Because we made that up. Yeah? We agreed that we made that up. It's all based upon how you read what? Verse 40. We read verse 40 in a very different way to Adventism from its beginning to the present. And it would be worth your while revisiting those studies that show you the argument or the logic that we use to do that. Because we did it and we thought in English you say you nailed it, we've sorted it out and we can move on. But it's not that straightforward. Okay, so then we're going to say 6th to 7th. And we already say the 6th is the USA. So the 7th is whom? So I knew people were just going to say USA. Image. That would just be USA. That'd be a proxy for USA then. So in the past, we would say it's the papacy. Is that right? Sorry? That's what I said in the past. We would say that's the papacy. Someone can help me. Isn't that what the Time of the End magazine is going to teach? I'm worried now. People are just saying yes. What we doing? You tell me, because I'm just going to say no. I already told you I think it's the papacy. Very few people are agreeing with me. Okay, let's take a break then. Let's go back to the Time of the End magazine. It came in various guises or editions. And I thought there was one, the primary one, I'm going to call it, that has a picture of two people. Who are the two people, Esther? The boss of the UN? That's a facetious statement. Okay, if you don't know, that's fine. The pictures are blessing.
Pope John Paul II
Pope and
and Reagan.
and Reagan. The papacy and the USA. Because the USA is whom? The armies and the economic power or the bank of the papacy. So Esther has said the king of the north. So the USA is not the king of the north. That's what's in the Time of the End magazine. Yes, we all agree with that? So if that's the papacy, we'll put the USA in here. All we'll say is that there's an anomaly here. Is that right or wrong? That the king of the north comes to make war with the king of the south. I don't know how you would explain the verse. I'm just going to say sometime after 1798. In 1798, who's the king of the south? France. King of the north is the papacy. And where will we get from France to, we'll just say Russia? We do that somehow or another. So Russia becomes the king of the south. And then the king of the north is going to take revenge sometime after. We okay with that? And this movement says that sometime after is when? (1989). Yep, that's the essence of that booklet. So, was that correct or wrong? Okay, I'll go with both. Are you okay with both, Curtis? Okay, are you okay with both? It's right and wrong? What you're saying?
Could you repeat it? Sorry.
Papacy is the King of the North in 1989. Is that right or wrong? That's what the booklet teaches. Is that correct or incorrect? You think it's incorrect. So if it's incorrect, then who is the army, the chariots, and the ships, and who is the King of the North? I guess you would argue it's the United States using its own resources. Is that what you're saying? So if that's the case, what's the Pope doing when it says there's a holy alliance as opposed to a secular alliance? What do you understand holy alliance to mean? We'll go with blessing, to infer. What does that term infer when it says a holy alliance?
Papacy is in charge. The relationship.
I just wait for it to translate. She can't hear you.
The Pope was in charge of the relationship.
So that's my understanding. The term Holy Alliance means that the Pope is in control. Today we would call it church-state relationship. Would we? No. Yesterday we would call it church-state relationship. Today we would call it what, Charity?
Culture and
No.
state? No.
Not culture and state. Natalie?
Nationalism? No.
Two words. Debbie?
National.
State nationalism. Yep. Elder Terry brought that term up at least last week, if not before. She didn't say this. I'm saying it. So it might be wrong. That state nationalism, I think, is a different expression to say church and state. And we don't like the word church now because church isn't national. As Charity said, culture. Is everybody okay with that? And that was so long, I have no idea why we're even talking about that. Dear me. What's that? 30 minutes. Good, I'm running. Let me write that down. Oh, so Holy Alliance. Blessing said that is church in control. Is that, you didn't actually say that, but that fair enough? And so that's the Pope. We'll call it the papacy. I'll put it in quotation mark because that's not an accurate definition. And who? We'll call it USA without defining what that means. So this is John. And this is Reagan. Someone give me the spelling? REA. AN. So everybody okay with that? Okay, so there are now several problems we've got. So if the papacy was dead in 1798, how can it have Holy Alliance? So what we're going to do here, it's obvious, guess, come on, shout out. Sorry, resurrection. I'll put alive for its resurrection. Okay, is that resurrection? Is that how you spell it? Yeah. Sorry, just resurrect. It's not double S. Okay. That better? Is that still wrong? Okay, so that's resurrect. Where do we get that from? I mean, Bible. Book. Revelation 17. So I thought you were going to say 1798. So I thought. Revelation 17, the verse, someone? 9? That sounds quite close. Someone come up with the verse. Just shout out the verse when you found it. We could go to 13, but we've gone to 17. If you want to give me 13, chapter and verse, I'll do that too. 3? 10. Happy with 10? Yeah, I would have gone for 8, but I didn't want to. Are we happy with 8? Okay, 8. Do you want to give us 13, Andres? When you're ready. So now we're going to say, based upon this structure, that it resurrects in 1989. It all seems to fit. Are we going to go with 13.3? Okay. So we'll put 13.3. So there are a couple of problems with all of this. So we'll create, say, problems. I call it problems. You might call it something else. 1, we'll call, hope this is a respectful term. It's not my term. Hitler's Pope. What does Hitler's Pope mean? There's an alliance. Hitler's in charge. Hitler's a puppet. Not the title. That's the title of a book. So don't be fooled by the title of the book. We've got Hitler's in charge, and you said Hitler's puppet. But that's what you said. Okay. So what this is telling us, I've just used this from the title, is that there's an alliance between the Pope and the Third Reich. We won't say Germany. Everybody okay with that? With that idea? Okay. So why on earth why does the Pope want to go into an alliance with Hitler? What's the Pope's objective or the papacy's objective? Over here? Sorry? Soviet Union? Power? What? Who wants power? Power to do what? To rule what again? So when it died in 1798, we had the papacy there. Who actually died? I know this is going to be very gendered, bordering on sexist. I apologize. Who died in 1798? The woman died. Anyone else? What choices do we have? Woman? Sorry? Pope Pius, that's the woman, I think. I think she's going to say that's the woman. The husband. But in Revelation 70, it doesn't call them husbands. It says the kings who commit fornication. So who dies? The woman or the man? There's an old study, 2007, that says the woman is the Revelation 17 woman is the, she jumps from head to head. She's the perpetual. She's the daily. She doesn't die. It's the men that die. And who killed the men? Who? Who killed them? Who killed all those men? No, woman didn't do it. That'd be a bad thing. France. France sets up the papacy. With whom? Clovis. And brings down the papacy with Napoleon. But it doesn't do anything to the Pope. Putting a man in a prison isn't doing anything. Because they just put another Pope up, like the next day. They put another Pope up the next day, didn't they? What France did, what Napoleon did, was what? Made war with Europe. Why? Not because of power, to deliver the punishment. Where's that punishment found? Daniel 11? Is it 11? I was going to go to think to 9 or 8. What's going to be poured upon the desolate? Daniel 9, some verse. The punishment's going to come on Rome, papacy, for what it did. So God is going to raise up Napoleon. It's going to bring hatred into the heart of France. And where's that found? Revelation, not 11. It's a repeating pattern. Who brings down Babylon, or whatever we want to call it, at the end of the world? 17. The kings want to seek revenge upon her. Are we okay with that? Hopefully we're not going too fast. Okay, So 1798, that death is the death of the partner, not the church. Yes? So what's Hitler's Pope is World War II. Yeah? World War I is a prelude for World War II. Just like 2016 is a prelude to so to the real Sunday law. Are we okay with that? So we'll forget World War I, World War II, Hitler's Pope. What's that story? The kings are dead. What does we'll call it the woman, need to do? Find another lover. Who is that? It's on the board. No, it's on the board. The USA. That's the next king that comes up. And the USA says what? I'm a Puritan. I don't commit fornication. Are we okay with that? So who's what? Oh, so she has to hang around until what? The next opportunity to a suitable king, which ends up being Hitler. And what does the Pope want to do? Step one. What's step one? Sorry? Territories. Step one. Verse 40. Destroy the king of the south. You can either say it's revenge or it's the first step to regain what was lost. And now, Pope wakes up, looks for France, and France says, not me. That baton like a relay got passed on a long time ago. It's Russia, Soviet Union. So that's what World War II is, in a very simplistic fashion. Hitler's Pope. So you know, Pope's around way before 1989, where we said the resurrection. So, did the Pope resurrect 1939, whatever date you want to give? It'd have to be before that, because you'd have to go to World War I, of course. Is the Pope going to resurrect before that time? Yes or no? So my question is, does papacy resurrect before? No. During World War I and II? Is that a resurrection of the papacy? Yes or no? You can say yes or no, or yes and no. But I don't like that one. Yes or no? Yes? No? Okay, so it's a trick question to begin with. There is a king of the South. Soviet Union. Trick question because the papist is the woman and she never died in the first place. Remember? So the resurrection is the resurrection of what? The partner or state power. Are we okay with that? So is there a resurrection of state power? Yes or no? We'll go with World War II. Hitler, the Third Reich, is that the resurrection of state power? Yes or no? Okay. So someone says yes, someone says no. Does anybody want to say why they're saying yes or why they're saying no? Okay, so Monica says the refinement of that question is, was there an attempted state resurrection? So I think we'd say yes to that, but does it work? No. So that's why it's a yes and a no. It's a failed attempt. And by the way, who stops them? Who stops the resurrection in that history? Sixth Kingdom, the USA. Are we okay with that? So not only is the USA not going to be the state supporter, it's going to, I'll say it's going to keep, I'm going to cheat, it's going to keep her buried. She's not dead, remember. No one's allowed to create this thing, this alliance. Okay, so that's problem one. Then there's problem two. So problem one is, which I think we've answered. The Pope, we'll call it the Pope resurrection because we've got all of this stuff here, dead and alive, and it's the papacy, etc. We've got it coming alive in 1989. Is that the right time? Yes. It's the right time. Verse 40. According to us. That's this story here. This is our version. This is our version of verse 40. You've got to remember that. Based upon our version of verse 40, yes, everything's fitting right. Okay? But there's a problem which this graphic, can't point to it. I guess I'll point to it. This one here, which this graphic deceives you about. So we'll just explore that. If anybody's confused or I'm going too fast, tell me to stop and we'll revisit. Okay, so we're just going to look at the rise of the seventh kingdom. We're not going to identify who it is. The rise of the seventh kingdom. And we're going to go for three versions. Version one, I'm looking for a date. We'll do it the other way around. Someone says Sunday law. Don't think it's Sunday law. So we'll go, Natalie said 2021. 2021, she used the term panium. Next one. It says on the board, it's right here. Yeah, so that one was easy. And 1798. Same story, just picking different points. Yeah. So we can then say this 1798 is the rise of what? It's on the board. It's on the board, on the digital board. It says number 3, version 3, 1798. Yeah. The problem with this is that you reverse engineer this. So just want to make sure that we understand that. And then 1989 and 2021 are just waymarks in that story. Okay. So when I say we've back engineered it, because we're saying we already know the answer. What's the great test? When did we know? When did we sort all of this out? What year? (2018). The Midnight Cry said what? New great test. The great test is not Sabbath, is equality, gender. I'm going to call it a cultural phenomena issue, because I can't spell phenomena. It's a cultural issue, nothing to do with Sabbath. Okay. So I don't know many things. I don't know this thing, what I'm about to say. I have no idea what counterfeit means. So I'm going to just say that. So don't say, why did that person say it? Is the papacy good or bad? Are you on the right side or the wrong side of the issue today? Put your hands up if it's bad. Go on, Gabriella. You would, because you want to. Charity says, you looked back as well, checking. Bad. Oh, 2 people, 3. Good. Who's the popes or the papacy? We'll say the popes, avowed enemy. Trump. Not you. Not Adventist. Trump or Trumpism. So the papacy is good. When did we know that? For sure. 2018. Whether you knew that or not, whether it was stated explicitly, which it wasn't, And I don't know what counterfeit means. But the Midnight Cry ends up defining or explaining that the papacy is good at the end. Not bad. So somewhere along the line, the papacy, are you happy to say the papacy was the king of the north? In this history, for blessing. Yes? Close approximation. King of the North. And in 1989, and the lead up to it, say 10 years or whatever, is it the King of the North then? So the reason I asked you is because we went through the Holy Alliance. And I guess I kind of pressurized you to say that because it was holy, the Pope was in charge. And therefore it was controlling the United States. Which means that the Time of the End magazine was correct in its analysis. I'm going to say that then, if I can't get you to. So I'm going to say it's the King of the North. Because it wants to seek revenge upon the Soviet Union or Russia, as it tried to do during the World Wars. Do you agree on that narrative that I gave for the World Wars, that was the papacy doing that? Okay, so if that's the case, when did the Pope stop being bad and became good? Uh, 2013, I've heard. Curtis? We'll say the papacy in general. So you're going to go with France, with Francis. What's the second council? When's Vatican II? Well, we've already agreed that the papacy is the king of the north in 1979. I'll go with, or a bit later. So it's long after Vatican II. So what happens after 1989? We'll say 2 years later. Why is that significant? Charity? Oh, no, we'll go with that so I don't have to repeat.
The USA is ignored by
No.
the papacy is ignored by the USA.
A bit more than ignored.
The alliance?
The king, state power, USA, who's the servant or the tool of the woman. She needs it. So there's a holy alliance. What's that story that goes on in the 89 to 91 period? We mark 91 because it's the new presidency, I think. Is that right? Yeah. Is that not? It's not Bush? Am I mistaken? Yeah? Curtis is looking worried. I believe you, but we'll go with 89. I think I said 91. Yeah, 88. So we've got Bush now, and he's saying what? Not his literal words. What's America doing?
Going
Not
alone.
that.
Oh. Uh, it's preaching. What is it called? Capitalism. It's spreading.
Who's the king of the North? (1989). We've got it all here. It's the papacy, the armies of Rome. The bank and the military power is the United States. It's Time of the End magazine. Then what happens? At that very time, we marked 91, but it's 89. Something changes. The story version of that, or parable version.
Gorbachev? You mean
Nothing to do with the South.
Hmm.
Someone said something else? Okay, we could go with divorce, but remember, they're not married anyway. Rejection. I want to say theft. Robbery. So what is getting stolen? And who's the robber of thy people? I think that's a joke. The crown that sits on the Pope's head is going to be stolen by the Pope's servant, which is the USA, which is a coup. So a coup happens, and something that's never happened in the past. The king say, we'll do without religion, thank you very much. We'll do it ourselves. DIY. And they then take on the title of the King of the North, which is why we have 1989. Are we okay with that narrative? With that story? So there's the two problems. At the very moment that the papacy is the King of the North in 1989, it loses the title immediately, if I can say it that way. And therefore, that has been missed in the Time of the End magazine and in many of our thinking. So they're the two problems. Who is the King of the North? So let's try to summarize as we close what we've said today. So we've reviewed past studies. We've seen that there's problems and complexities that we need to address. Everything is predicated on the idea that Daniel and Revelation are one book. We spoke as an example about the red dragon. The red dragon is everything. And we have to be careful when we take a narrow story, a narrow segment of history, and turn the dragon into that thing. Then we discussed about the King of the North and some complexities about its death and resurrection. And that was a bit of a windy story. There were many twists and turns. What we can see is that the woman never dies in real life. It's state power that dies. And it's state power that needs to come back into play. That's Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars or the European Wars. I'm going to say of 1798. It's not accurate, of course. The next king that comes up, which is the USA, not only rejects that relationship in its own land, the earth, it prevents it happening in the sea. I guess a century and a half later. And that's World War I, World War II. And then, papacy, the woman, ends up doing what? Going back to the United States and making an alliance with them. And that's when the story begins to become complicated. Because now we have to start dealing with 6th and 7th kingdoms. But before we do that, we have to realize that in 1989, there's daylight robbery going on. That the papacy gets sidelined in its mission. And the United States takes on that crown or that mantle to rule the world. And now the United States isn't really seeking revenge, because that's what the Pope wanted to do. But prophetically, we could argue that it is. But now it just wants to rule the world. And it can only do that in 3 steps. 40, 41, and 42. And so this movement's grown in its understanding about the story of the King of the North, and it's much more complicated than we've realized. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you that you have brought us through a difficult and painful path over this past 1 hour. There have been many twists and turns in this story. And even now, myself and others, I'm sure, are not settled. We're confused. We still have questions that we need answers for. Give us the incentives that we would be motivated to put away our worldly cares and worries and bend our energies, focus our attention to understanding these events, these stories. Because as we do that, will have a clearer understanding of not only what your will is, not only what the will of our enemy is, Satan, but will have a better understanding of your righteousness and therefore our humanity. In Jesus' name. Amen. I want to thank everybody who joined us online. And we meet local time. It's about 12 hours from now. And we're UTC +1, and it's at 8:30 a.m. 8:45, 8:30? I don't think it's 8:30. 15? 8:45. UTC +1. Thank you very much, everybody who joined us.